You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Purdy Machining, and this week I am very happy to welcome Curt Chan to the show. Welcome, Curt.
Thanks for having me, Dylan.
My pleasure. So I think a lot of those in the instant machinist community probably know who you are, but for those who don't, who are you and what do you do?
Awesome. Well, I'm just another instant machinist or somebody that plays machining on YouTube, right? But I'm an engineer by trade. And so I work for a company called Autodesk that really, you look at our mission and our vision, it's about empowering the next innovators to design and make things and through our technology. And so you look at the evolution of design and manufacturing. Autodesk has always been a forefront in that evolution. And so I'm just happy to be a contributor in that and be a part of a community. I think that's what we're going to talk about a lot today is community and why we talk about the instant machinist community.
Definitely. And so you just recently came back to Autodesk. What did you come back as? What is your goal? Because when I first met you, I was telling you earlier, I was talking to my wife, you were a tech evangelist, I believe. And then you went up through a few different roles, but now you're back with an entirely different title.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You look at everybody's career journey. And for a lot of the people that know me, like I'm an engineer by trade. Like I went to San Diego State, went to a traditional 4-year college, got that mechanical engineering degree. And I worked at like the Northrop Grummings and the Lockheeds, and I call it cube engineering. Sit in a cube, do my calculations. And at that time, I was a part of the program that was designing the JSF Joint Strike Fighter 35 aircraft.
Oh, cool.
And so it was interesting to be a part of that. And my segment was this little this box on that wing. And that's what I contributed to, right? On high cycle fatigue, testing and all this kind of crazy stuff. But I said, is this how it's going to be to life as an engineer? And it was, am I going to go work here for 30 years, get my fat Rolex at retirement? And this is it? Is this how it's going to be? And you look at the evolution of change of like, people that are our parents that grew up in the 1950s and 60s and how careers were of you stay with the company and then you retire and there's pensions. And then you look at the evolution of the next wave and the .com and just things have changed in society. And so I said, well, I want to take a different path, right? And I was introduced to more of software selling and software sales. And so I took that experience, went down a path of software sales, and we call it application engineering, right? Taking that, getting deeper into product. And then, here I've landed and I've worked at like companies and used products like SolidWorks and, recently coming back, Autodesk products. And of course, in more of a focused area of CAE and simulation is where I was. I spent 3.5 years at a company called Ansys that is a leader in simulation software, which partners with Autodesk. And we'll talk about that. But yeah, today, now I'm in the education realm and it's like, well, Curt, wow, you've had this interesting path of education. How did you land here? And what some people know, maybe not a lot of people, is that I actually used to be an adjunct professor teaching SolidWorks, CAD and manufacturing. I taught it for 7 years at a local vocational school or community college.
Really?
And I did that.
Idea.
Yeah. So I spent 7 years doing that in conjunction working at Autodesk. So here I'm working for Autodesk, teaching SolidWorks, right? And I just felt dirty, Here I am I'm a part of a new product that got just started under the former CEO Carl Bass, and it was a product called Fusion. And there was a big roadmap, a big vision. They acquired HSM Works at the time back in 2012 or 2011, and I joined in 2013. And I had it was a great opportunity to be a part of something just new. And so, teaching SolidWorks and that maturity and that CAD, it did so many things. And I think people can agree it's still widely used in today's market. But I saw the vision and saw the direction we were going. And so I did a lot of testing with my students of how would I drive adoption or what will we hear from people? Because when you think about vocational education, teaching there, this is not, I taught at night. So you're not getting traditional people coming from high school coming over and like, I don't know what, I use Tinkercad or something. No,
right.
Like these are like working professionals that have careers at maybe a job shop or a big company that want to learn a new skill. So their company is sending them to go take some CAD and manufacturing classes at a vocational school at night. And so that persona and that audience I was teaching to were people going to be real users and giving me real feedback because they came from doing something else, whether it was another CAM competitive software, or whether it was like SketchUp, something different, right? And so the goal here was, in vocational, it's typically, you know, industry teaches this, or that's what we got to teach, right?
Right.
And it's tough because, when you want to try to drive change, when there's new things out there, it's that all these packages out there are just another tool in your toolbox to be successful, right? And working for Autodesk, being an evangelist, you want to introduce that. You want to give the people of tomorrow the opportunity just to have more tools to use. And it's difficult to drive change. And people don't like change. We can all agree. But my goal was the famous Gladiator quote. If you've seen that movie, is you got to win the hearts and minds of the crowd, and then the crowd will drive the change to the management, right?
So this return to Autodesk is really a return to form for you. Like this is coming full circle.
It is. And I stopped teaching because I ended up, having a family. And not saying I couldn't do it, but it's just there's a balance, right, of time and what's important to you as you grow in your career. But yeah, I saw this opportunity to drive strategy, to be part of how is vocational education going to be in 2 to 3 years? How's it going to even be next year? What are the things we got to focus on? What are the things that are important to the community, right? And what we got to change within the product and communicate that to the product managers out there and the technical marketers out there, because this is the next generation, right? What people don't understand is our community of education, which blew me away, is millions of people go to our website for education software because everything's free. So that's number one. Everything's free, but then two, it's millions of people go. And so we need to empower this next generation. I have kids. And so for all the people that have kids out there, you don't realize the importance of like these things until you see your kids and then they have the laser cutter at their school. And you're like, well, I don't know how to run that. And I want you to learn that.
Yeah.
I want to empower my daughters to get dirty, right? And get hands-on and understand manufacturing, because it is important, and it's an important part of a workflow of bringing a product to market of anything we work on. So I know I've been talking a lot, but you can see there's passion here, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, let me ask you this. So you said you went into mechanical engineering. What led you to go into that? Because we were talking before we started that the big challenge right now is to get people to choose to go into manufacturing and to understand that it's not this, dark, dreary, the Christian Bale's The Machinist is the example I keep using. Like that was all I knew about machining until I went to my local community college and started taking some classes like that. So what made you choose mechanical engineering, and how can we then apply that to pushing people into manufacturing instead?
Yeah, there's a couple segments we can go down. My passion, and everybody has a passion. You look at all these instant machinists, you look at all the people out there using our products, or any product out there to make something, is passionate about something, right? And my passion was cars, or is cars. And so I thought in my career, I needed to become a mechanical engineer to go design cars. Like that was the end goal. I want to design cars. I want to go work for Nissan or Porsche or somebody. I need to become a mechanical engineer. And out here where I live in San Diego, the Nissan Design Studio is down here in La Jolla. And so I was able to somehow weasel in a tour of it and see what they were designing. This was back in early 2000s. And when the 350Z, if you're a car person, that just came out, when they brought it back out of retirement, the new Maxima, I saw all these cars, and the people I were talking to, they're like, oh, I have a mechanical engineering degree and I'm now doing this. I'm like, bingo, this is what I'm on the right path. I chose it. But little did I know, you really need to go to Calty, or you need to go to Pasadena School of Art to design. And so it was just a different perspective, but I ended up going through this journey, right? Of look, I'm still going to get connected. And if my end goal is to get to this, they were like, well, you're going to have to go start in Detroit. And I'm like, Detroit? Look, I'm in San Diego, man. Like,
right.
I'll just stick to, I'm already here. I'll go work for a defense contractor. And so
Yeah.
it was just interesting to hear all these people's paths of what it was. And so I kind of found my own road and I stuck with it, right? What a lot of people don't know is I actually changed my major through college to accounting because my father was an accountant because it was hard. Calc 3 kicked my butt when you have to go through the Calc 3 and differential equations for all those engineers out there. Like those were difficult classes. And I got deterred. Like I was like, dude, can I do this? Right? Is this something I want? Am I happy? And I had some really good friends and still some of my closest friends today from college that said, look, just stick with it. Like do a couple classes still with calc and go see if you want to do accounting. And I ended up like coming back to engineering. But I kind of took this mini little like semester sabbatical to go try something different because it was hard and I wasn't doing well. And,
it is hard. I took Calc 3 twice, I believe, to pass it.
Yeah.
It was
Dude, I
really
took
tough.
Dynamics twice, right? And I was never, I'm going to admit, like I took even the electrical engineering courses twice because dude, all I remember is V equals IR. That's it. Like I like all the circuitry is just it just doesn't stick with me. And so I knew that was what it was going to be. And a part of that curriculum was a little bit of machining on like a manual lathe and a manual mill Bridgeport, of course. But it was always considered dirty. Like you think manufacturing equals dirty, right? It's never a conversation in our household of, my parents are just immigrants, worked hard, came to America, had, just middle-class jobs. And it was, I want you to do better. You always get become a doctor, lawyer, and engineer, one of those, or nurse or something in medical, right? Because they make money, a lot of money, go there, right? And so you think about manufacturing equals that mindset of people are perceiving it as dirty, right? It's not engineering, and the pay scale people perceive as engineering salary versus machinist salary. Oh, well, that's not a lot of money. And you're going to get dirty and you want to be a mechanic. Like it's classified differently. And so when you hear that, or there's a perception of that, let's say there's a perception of that, right? People need to understand is that perception isn't always a reality, right? And so how do we bridge these two worlds together? And when you look at engineering and machining and manufacturing, those are like peanut butter and jelly. It goes hand in hand. A lot of people that I taught at a college would design things and they couldn't manufacture it, right? And I think that's the biggest hurdle is you have a lot of engineers, and I taught a lot of engineers that knew how to design, but they didn't know how to make. And so when you have pockets with no fillets, unless you got a wire EDM, you tell me or how you're going to make it, right? It's those little things.
I've had to educate some of my customers, and like thankfully they know their shortcomings, so they've come to me and say, "Hey, tell me how to redesign this to make it manufacturable." But like I've worked with a lot of engineers that just don't understand like tools are round and they spin, and so there has to be radii in the pockets. Exactly like what you were saying.
Yeah, and this is all important stuff, right? And so this push of manufacturing is dirty, or oh, that's just like always hands-on and I'm not going to do anything really challenging, is false. It's such an important piece of the equation, and people need to roll up their sleeves. Engineers need to roll up their sleeves and understand processes and work with the community out here, because this is the foundation, right? When I crossed the chasm into getting more into the software side of manufacturing with CAM, I was humble, I feel, to go to these people and these leaders that I worked with at Autodesk and in my career to be like, look, I'm an engineer, but I'm coming to you and learning from you. I'm not going to tell you. I need you to tell me and educate me, right? And when you have this understanding and this relationship, that's when the credibility starts being built, right? And the trust. I'm reading this book called The Speed to Trust by Stephen Covey. I think we'll talk about like professional development and learnings. I recommend that book to anybody, right? Get the Audible because it's like a 12-hour Audible book. But it talks about, to to grow and to build relationships, it comes to how fast can you build trust with people so that you can move forward and execute, right? And once that trust was built fast with those leaders that I work with here, that's when we were able to move and do some really creative things, and it's really been a blessing, and I've learned a lot through that experience.
That's awesome. So you are now go-to market strategy manager for vocational education. So what does that mean? What kind of collaboration are you doing? Like what is your goal in that role?
It sounds fancy, but all it is, it's I've taken through this career a path of engineering over to marketing. And so I think a lot of people see me throughout the community, which I've been quiet on. I call it I needed a detox, right? I needed to step away and have, I think we all feel we always need to step away from it. And so I actually delete the app weekly and get away from it, and then reinstall it to come back.
That's
And,
smart. I like that.
and I need to do that, right? Because I was really into it. And people that are important and want to get a hold of me, you have my number. Call me, right? Like I'm all game. Text me, like WhatsApp me. And so, to your question, is my role is we have specific segments in education, right? You have secondary, you have vocational, you have K through 12, you have lower and higher ed, you have all these different segments. And so the segment I manage is around vocational because I come from that and I've taught in that. And so strategy, everyone's like, what does that mean? Is that like biz dev? Do you like business relationships? And it's all of the above, right? It's thinking about, from an education standpoint, where are we trying to be in 3 to 5 years with education? What do we got to execute next year? Where is the market changing? What do we got to change from a product perspective? Who are we not talking to from a community? Because that will then drive everything else downstream, right? As according to data, right? As I always, from now marketing guy, is marketing without data is like driving with your eyes closed, right? And so if you don't learn and you got to adjust, right? It's very key. And I think we all see, just the data that we see within the community. I forget the publication that comes out of showing like the most used CAM packages out there. And excuse me, and I remember, Fusion was at the very bottom for many, many years, and you just see this adoption curve. And now this amount of users we have and what people are using, it's just amazing to see, like, the numbers don't lie. Like, people are using it. We're making a change, right? But then how do we continuously be not only a leader, but a thought leader? Because it comes down to the people at the end of the day and the relationships, right? And
Definitely.
so now, I manage and market and put together a strategy around where we're going to get to with education. And so it's important. There's always, at one point 10 years ago, I think Carl Bass made all of our education software free, right? Took a business that made a lot of money and made it free because he understood the importance of education. And, I applaud him for that and what he's done. So it's a
Definitely.
part of me.
So does that involve then going to vocational schools, community colleges, and trying to get them to have fusion classes? Or because, like, I know I was just talking in the last episode about how I want to hire from the community college I went to, but I
Yeah.
also know that they're a Mastercam school, and it's like they're going to have to learn fusion, and I know that sometimes unlearning some of the Mastercam stuff and relearning
Mhm.
Autodesk's way of doing things can be a little bit of a hurdle.
It's called change, right? And that's the thing, is when I came from SolidWorks to Fusion, I was very frustrated, for those Fusion users, understanding there's between assemblies and joints and what joints do, and why can't I ground the part and why can't I do this? These are all simple things that I'm so accustomed to, right?
Yeah,
It's a creature of habit. And so to that point, is a part of the strategy is the adoption within vocational universities, and we have a specific team that does that, and I've done that in my past. And so I work hand in hand. Me, I love feet on the street. I love visiting customers. I love visiting schools and just hearing and understanding, like, well, what's the why behind you not changing? Oh, is it because, like, nobody in my territory is hiring because they don't need to use SolidWorks, or that's what they want, or Mastercam? Well, look at our customers, right? Here's the successes. And so a lot of it is understanding of, like, what is even the universities doing long term? What is their strategy? Some of them just live in today, and other ones are thinking about the 3 to 5, right? And so, yes to that, right? It's working with the universities, working with our team that works in the field all the time and talks and works with the adoption of drive-in fusion. So yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely put a good word in for you guys at Pima here, because
Yeah,
I would
all
love to be
for it.
able to hire students that know at least some fusion, even if it's just a one class. And, because they have three classes, I think, that are all cam based. They're all, different levels of
Hmm.
master cam. Even if they just had one and like understood how to drive basic fusion, that would be killer. So I applaud that.
Yeah, and to anybody listening, right? I think with this community sees other people in the community, and we're here to support each other and offer advice, offer help, and then offer recommendations, right? And this is not a ad for Fusion, right, or Autodesk, but I think it's about an ad for educating people on the different opportunities that are out there. And I'm a user of so many different products, but it's what's going to fit you and your business and your pocketbook and all of the above. As you know, as a business owner, right? You cross this chasm of you got to make decisions of what's going to help scale, and that's what everybody just wants is to hopefully scale. And we're here to help with that.
I definitely appreciate that. And I think a lot of business owners do as well. So, speaking of this community, Ken, Zodiac Engineering, asked, when's the next CAM challenge? Because you were famously, I don't know if it was 100% your idea, but you famously ran all the CAM challenges. I participated in, I think, every
Yeah.
single one of them.
Oh man.
Big fan of them. And so I think the community has been missing them as a whole. Is that something under your purview or that you can push on? Any plans on that?
Yeah. So shout out to Ken. Shout out to that community. It's very emotional, right? And it's because even though I call it the 3.5 year sabbatical away from true CAD and CAM and learning a new skill set, learning a whole bunch of new things, and now ANSYS and Autodesk partner together and do some amazing things. But you kind of cut my arm and I bleed fusion, right? And I bleed manufacturing because I've been there in the shop with you when we go in our history, right? Figuring things out in the shop, trying to get the machine to run. I forgot what machines you guys had, but that was fun.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
I love, right? I think that's why a lot of people love to do. That's why we're in this kind of realm. And so I'm excited to dive back into that. But I'm always like to turn away from the original question here. Is so one shout out to Al Watmo, who that it originally started with him, and he just said, "Look, I want to do this," and he did it. I'm like, "Yo, man, I'll take it over. We can scale this. We can get creative with these things. Let's have some fun with it through our own personal Instagram accounts, right?" And Instagram a big thing now. I would love to even know like who's on TikTok, and we noticed like look at like market segments like Gen Z. 50 million users of Gen Z are on TikTok, and that's where they go for their news. And so I would just, is that kind of the next thing? Are we missing out, or are we need to be there? Do we got to go to these different platforms for if we brought the CAM challenge out of retirement, right? Because people don't see the behind the scenes side of it, of what goes on to run these challenges, and the sponsors that just one, name dropping up guys from Fifth Axis, Orange Vice, like Carbide Tooling, like all those people willing to just contribute to a community, right? It starts with the people at the end of the day. But once again, to the original question is, I want to do it. It's figuring out how do we do it, right? In a fashion of how can we marry. Yeah, it's easy for you now to go and turn on your nice machine and go cut apart and do some kick ass. But like, how do we then talk about this getting the people of tomorrow inspired by what we're doing? And so how can I take these up and coming students and partner them with very successful machinists out there and bridge this gap of like, let's partner together with a student or somebody in education who's looking to this big Insta community and being like, wow, I'd love to like own a shop. I love to be a part of this, right? Well, how do we bring the educators and the actual workers of today to participate. That's how I see the next challenge becoming
I like
is
that idea. That
is a
sounds
bigger,
great. Yeah,
right?
like a
You
kind of
know,
a Secret Santa kind of thing almost, where you
it
partner up,
is.
maybe a younger designer
Yeah,
with a machinist who has machine availability and get it done that way. That sounds like a ton of fun.
exactly. And you look at, I forget the gentleman who's not won a couple of times, but there was a student who I think in the Bay Area, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he's done some amazing things. And he was in a shop class. He went out and he used those machines there. And sometimes there's not that accessibility because we all know, like, are you certified to go run the Haas or do this or do that? And so it's just kind of the relationship. And when you partner with somebody like yourself, and I think that's where the value part comes in, right? Is like, hey, look, maybe the student programs it in Fusion, and then it's about collaboration. You then machine it because you have the access. Like, how do we kind of do this kind of matrix? And so I think that's like, I always use my sports analogy here is like that's they're coming out of retirement of that challenge and go and doing it right and bringing these two worlds together. That's how, and it's just not like, oh, because I'm go-to-market strategy guy and that's the strategy to do it. It's more of like passion, right? Like we understand there's a gap in skill, and I think we all, like yourself, as you admit, came from a vocational school and took this career path. How do we continue that movement forward rather than just be some traditional, who got the chops to showcase what they can machine? Let's make it more meaningful, right? And so I I think I always am amazed by the turnout of what happens in these parts. I think if people are unaware, a lot of the machine parts have made their way to corporate Autodesk and sit on like this like wall of fame. I believe I forget the gentleman who out of Sweden machined. I think we did a challenge, machined the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah, with the Fusion
and
logo.
with the Fusion logo, and that sits at our one market. I never had a chance to see it because I left like right at the time when he won, and he went over to AU. But I want to see that, and I think those are the inspirational pieces, right? That show like who else is doing something like that, right?
Totally.
For the
Yeah, that's
community.
super exciting. So speaking of, education and bringing people into that, what are your other ideas on how as a community we can support that? Because, you won't, like, none of us will have either employees or jobs, if there's not this next batch of people to come fill these roles.
Yeah, it comes down to community, right? And it comes down to not only there's the physical community and then there's the digital community. And through the digital community, there are people, example being, I think, companies like SolidWorks with their user groups, companies like what we do here at Autodesk with Fusion and the Fusion community that, Kaching Song has been a part of and has helped grow and nurture. And at the end of the day, people don't want to talk to Autodesk or Dassault. They want to talk to Al at Autodesk or Curt or Kaching at Autodesk and have a relationship, right? And, I remember when we even would get together as a group, and I think a couple IMTSs, we held these meetups. We held these events to bring the community together to just have a conversation and learn from each other. And so I look at when 1186, who's on Instagram, first met him, I think 2015 IMTS, and he came up and I was talking to somebody about this. So he came up, he's like, look, like I see you guys on Instagram. I see you guys doing these things. I see what you guys are doing. Like, thank you. This is great. It's great to meet you. It's great to like meet the people, right? And that's what community is about, right? Is those relationships. And that's why we do it, right? Like everything else will fall. It's I can go call Amish from SS CAD Cam tomorrow and be like, hey, can I get your help on this? Or call Saunders and now and be like, hey, can you help me here? Right. And we there's now that trust. There's a speed of trust we get to with each other. And that's what community does, is it builds trust. And so how do we continuously build the trust between the education and the people of tomorrow and the yous, right? And that's a problem that I gotta try to call it, using Tuckman's I call it Tuxman's law of the norming, or the forming, the norming, the storming, and the performing, right? These phases of how do we move to different phases of execution. And I'm still forming around that. Like, what is that going to look like? But I think there's a lot of great avenues to go down.
Okay, well, let me phrase it like this then. What have you done in the past? Because, like you said, you are a person that people want to meet in relation to Fusion and all of that. So you've done a great job of building a community and building a persona that people attach to that. So what can we do? Like if somebody wants to do a very similar thing, or
Yeah.
wants to become a voice that people ask for help, or, is very supportive, what have you done in the past that you found really works for that? I mean, obviously, authenticity. You're
Mm-hmm.
clearly passionate, but if I'm on Instagram and I want to help out more, what can I do?
Yeah, so you look at how do you get to the virtual handshake if you're on digital, right? And I think that's where it comes out to is being. I was talking with a colleague a minute ago, and it's like it's about collaboration, right? And you're not gonna. What's the value of social media? It's to connect people, right? And you look at that value is if you're on social and not connecting yourself to other people, then you're not using the platform how it needs to be, right? And so people might be, and the beautiful part about social media and digital, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's different. This is not walking up and physically talking and communicating, right? It's a different form of communication. And so it starts with reaching out and being around and following some of the, you look in the digital world of hashtags and all these things that are of interest to you. Start following these and educating yourself on like what's out there and who are those people in those communities, right? You're gonna get like the people that have been uber successful, right? Now I have the 100K followers, and then you're gonna have the people that are gonna be the next 100K follower person, right? So how do you? So at the end of the day, it comes down to putting yourself out there to build the relationship, right?
Okay, I like that a lot. I think that's. It seems like consistency always helps. I mean, I know, like you said, we all kind of feel like we want to be consistent, but you need that social detox as well, because that
Yeah,
that content treadmill is really hard to keep up.
it is.
But
It
it
is.
also lets you speak to more people. I mean, the algorithms like consistency, unfortunately.
And you nailed it, right? It is, it comes back to what's your purpose and what's your goal. What are you trying to accomplish on social? Is maybe for you 90% of your business comes from Instagram, example, let's just go with that, right? And you're like, well, my goal is to drive business from that, but it's authentic because I'm not here pushing X, Y, and Z. I'm showcasing my talents and I'm showcasing these things, and that's what's driving the business. And I'm building trust with other people. So if you ask, hey, what's up with Dylan? Oh yeah, okay, cool, I'm gonna go with him because there's trust and I've talked to people, right? And so I think it's what's your goal with social and what do you want to get to? And I think there's opportunity with these new platforms to do these types of things.
Definitely. Well, to change gears a little bit, I kind of want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about manufacturing in general, because you are in a lot of shops, a lot, you've been in a lot of places, and I kind of want to know what your thoughts are on the trends that you're seeing, because, you look at a newspaper or the news or whatever, and everybody's saying that things are contracting, but, I talk to a lot of shops and I don't know a single person that's slow, or,
Yeah.
like everybody seems to be slammed. So,
Mm-hmm.
as far as our sector goes, what trends have you seen towards hiring, education, even just in general, the amount of work that's out there?
If so, let's address it from like the education front first. Is you see the market opportunity, right? Like think about how many kids, I'll call them kids, right? Go through or sign up at a vocational school, right? There's at least 2,700 at minimum vocational schools in just America. You're not even talking about other segments like the UK and how they do vocational, or Germany, right? And so you got all those people learning about manufacturing, machining. This is not like these schools are empty and they can't find people enrolling to understand manufacturing. That just tells you the type of opportunity that it's out there, right? That's why These shops are so busy and they need to get more people because like they need more resources, right? To help support them to make new products, right? You look at even to like the change in the industry of product coming back to America and manufacturing here, right? And you look at the pricing and the quality, all those things play a factor into like what's going on in manufacturing. Yes, could I recite some trends out there of 56.6% are growing here and there? But at the end of the day, if you talk to the community, which is the key part here, is you're going to see direction and you're going to understand it more. And I think it's like that, like off the grid kind of underground network of like, hey, this is what I'm seeing, or hey, do you know this person? Because I tell people when you get into manufacturing, my life motto is what I go through, what I've learned is the quote is think relationships first, business second, right? And so if you go out there in this arena of building relationships, and not I need to get that next 100 batch of parts to get made to keep my lights on, that will come with the relationship. And so it's more of a mindset thing. I see it as of, you might be reading Fox News and they're talking this negative thing, but over here you're like, what are you talking about? In my industry, you guys are citing this, but I'm seeing this, right? Or CNN is saying this, and it just depends on the source, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
as long as you just keep your grind, that's what it's about.
Well, so you brought up that we have all of these schools with students in them. Currently, we're doing a book club for Within Tolerance. We're reading a book called Critical Chain, and in it, there's a business school that the dean realizes that the businesses that are out there don't value their MBA candidates because they're not teaching them the right thing. I talk to a lot of shops, and they're still saying, "I can't get good people." So, do you think that there is a lack of correct education in this sector, and that's why we're seeing that?
That was well, I'm gonna make a note about that book. That sounds interesting, right? I think it comes down to curriculum at the end of the day, right? Because what I'm hearing is there are kids in an MBA program that are not getting taught properly, and they're going into the workforce, and they don't know what needs to be done, right? So it comes down to the type of framework of what's going on within these educational places. So so I think it now questions back to the curriculum of what these schools are pumping out. And it'll be good to understand like some of the data behind that, right? Like, are you seeing a better, program from this school versus this, and this is the why behind it? So I think there's a lot more behind the numbers here.
So, do you think there's an opportunity then for shops like mine to partner with schools to get the kind of candidates we want? And what kind of partnerships have you seen in that vein that have worked, and how have they, like, how would I approach that if I wanted to approach my community college and say, I want to help out? Like, is it in internships? Is it in monetary support? How do I support my local education?
Fantastic. So what I've done in the past being an educator is there's always going to be the professional network of relationships. And you having a strong relationship with your college, going to them saying, hey, look, we use this product. What I need is people that are willing to try new products out, right? Even though maybe today that school doesn't teach fusion, but who are going to be your change agents, right? Because you win the crowd, and this is going to change the staff, right? And so if you are going to be able to be the change agent to the crowd that would then change the staff, you're giving people an opportunity of employment. Hey, I need some interns. I need them to think in this kind of realm. So find me your best students. Great. They all use Mastercam. Example, send them my way. I'm going to test them and see. So what I used to do is I would give tests to my candidates, right? Of I didn't care if you programmed the part. I want to understand your thought process and willingness to learn something different to then do the part, right? And so this is kind of something that I would recommend is that if you're looking for interns or you want to help the community, but they're doing something different, your local community, test them, feel them out. If these are really the strongest students in the class and if the teacher's recommending them, but yet they are not willing to think outside of the box, and maybe there needs to be a real evaluation or an uncomfortable conversation with the teacher about, look, this is what I'm trying, and your students going to be more open-minded here, right? It's not about the tool, it's just the process we're trying to evaluate here. And so I think
Right.
you're going to learn a lot through that process.
Are there any examples that you've seen of businesses working well with their local education?
Oh yeah. So example coming back to when I taught here is from a vocational standpoint, you you start you start learning and understanding if your students have jobs right in the workforce, they're going back and evangelizing to their companies and corporations, say, hey, look, you know what, so and so is doing this, how can we get involved, right? And so I saw a lot of that happen, is that you work with the students. You're going to have ones that are, learning as a new skill set just because they're unemployed, but then you're going to have a big piece of that market still trying to learn, but take it back to showcase, hey, look, we can be a part of this community, right? So it's going to be a two-way street, but uh, I have not come across, or very rarely come across, a company that is not willing to help, right? And we think about help right away. People think like, oh, it's monetization. They want money. They want this from corporate. That's not what it's about. It's giving people opportunity, right? We're educating people on, this is what we do. Come for the company tour, right? And we'll showcase how manufacturing is important in my pace. And that's some of the things I've done before too. It's not about I need a sponsor. It's about let's educate people on like what corporate America is like within your company of manufacturing.
Okay. So you have two small kids.
Mhm.
What have you found works to get them excited about things? Like, how should we approach kids even that age about manufacturing to get them jazzed about it? Because, like you said, everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or a fireman, or, it's kind of hard to like, how do we become the toy that they want to play with, or the profession that they look up to?
Yeah. So I got three, right? And it is, my ages are 8, 7, and 5, and they're really prime for like all this kind of tinker cadish kind of stuff. And I love that term tinker cad, right? But like they are going to be intrigued by, my daughters will be like bracelets and rings and little figures, and my son will be the same thing of just introducing it from a additive manufacturing standpoint, right? It's always like, I feel like additive is like the gateway drug in regards to manufacturing, because you know why? Because it's clean, right? CNC machining, perception, dirty. Additive, clean. You just break it off and here it is, right? And so I hate that kind of perception, but it's just that perception is reality, right? Like this is how it is. And so we're able to introduce people to like simple forms, right? By making it fun, right? Aside from additive, I think the next biggest things that I'm seeing as I work with my kids' schools is laser cutting, um, and then CNC routing, right? Like Shapeoko or ShopBot or something like that. But laser cutting is great because it's not dirty, right? The
Right.
teachers don't have to physically get dirty with this stuff. So, and then you look at what you can make from those things. Think about like, yes, you go use a small mill to machine something out of aluminum. That is cool, right? Like a whistle or a bottle opener. That is cool. But for a kid, if I'm able to make like this cool little lantern out of a laser cutter and then put a light bulb in there, or do this with it and make a laptop stand, or do this to do a little bookcase, like those are all very relatable to kids, right? And so I think it comes down to, as we look at the bigger picture, it comes down to what's intriguing out there, right? And first and foremost, I go to instructables.com. If you guys aren't familiar with it, like they have so many cool projects that really tailor to those new segments and markets of just educating people on how to make things, right? Fun things. I think that's the key. Fun things, practical things. You're like, yeah, like I'm proud. I remember doing a workshop with actually one of my other evangelist buddies, then Taylor Stein, and he's had some pretty successful videos on YouTube. But we took an IKEA lamp and then we built the shade for the lamp and 3D printed it. And so you look at that and it hangs up in my daughter's room, and it's like you look at, you made that and you use Fusion and you went to the printer and you made it, and it's something tangible. And so those are the types of things to educate people on, right? And I think we're not missing that, but like we need to come back to those roots of like, this is fun. This is how
Oh, yeah.
manufacturing could be fun.
So for your kids, like, how are you introducing that? Is it when they say, oh, I'm bored, it's like, oh, let's go on Instructables, or are they like saying, like, oh, I need this thing, and you're like, oh, well, let's make it instead of buy it?
So my household is very different. And what's so interesting is this is just by choice, or maybe because I'm tired all the time with three kids, right? But we are a no tablet house, and I don't have them use quote unquote technology today, right? At school, they have opportunity for the makerspace. They go to these classes, they can learn these things, and they're getting introduced to it. And I'm coming in to help build and volunteer and support that community. What I have today is them coming home, and it's my time with them and family time and doing the things that I did as a kid, learning how to ride a bike, throwing a football, playing basketball, getting outside and playing, doing these things, right? And so that's my choice. Not saying what I love. Look, I got a Ender printer. Should I be doing stuff with it with them? Yes. Maybe because it's like broken. I'm trying to figure out the Z axis on it still. I don't know why it's not working, but like I should be doing more with it because like then it's going to inspire them to do more things. Right. And so um, I look at that as what is your balance, right? There's always going to be time. You know what I mean? There's always going to be opportunity, but like what is important to you, right? Because I know they're going to get plenty of time on a computer. They all have Chromebooks because per COVID, right? So
Right.
I try to take them away from the technology because personally today I don't want them to spend all this time on the technology. And if
I think that's
I
very admirable.
and that's all it is right here. I'm working for a technology company and I love it and I want them to do this stuff, but I still maybe I need to introduce it. And somebody has found a very good successful way of doing this. Dude, timer stuff don't work because like all my kids are fighting over it. They want to spend time. Like, no, like it's just too much of a headache. I need to figure out like, look, like, hey, maybe it's like the once a month project and we're gonna go build this, right? I think what I would really want is a laser cutter. I think there's more value for me in a laser cutter than a 3D printer, just because I can make like really cool things with it, right? Rather than like, I think 3D printing, you can do like cookie molds and figurines and rings and bracelets. But I think with like a laser cutter, like there's just like really cool projects out there with a laser cutter.
Definitely.
And so,
Yeah.
so yeah, anyhow, yeah.
Okay. So you wrote on the list growth mindset and professional development. What do
Yeah.
those things mean to you, and how do you find time for them?
Yeah. I think, if people had to talk to Curt 5 years ago before I left Autodesk, took my sabbatical of it, and then coming back, is I've learned a lot about leadership as an individual contributor, leadership in like a household, leadership from, developing your career to next levels. And I give credit to the mentors that I had at in my previous life, and I didn't understand that. Right, I didn't understand the importance of a mentor and coaches and what that does for not your career but you as a person, right? And I think this is very relatable to what we do in the community of the instant machinists is we all mentor and coach each other. Or if you now have grown and you have see a new person coming in, you're going to go mentor them and teach them and tell them like, hey, look, these are the things that I've learned, right. And so there's always a different way of you're subliminally doing these things. You just don't realize you're mentoring, coaching people, and then you throw that title, which I hate to call it title, onto it, but then it becomes a little bit more formal, and like we have more structured conversations around these things, and like where do you want to get to, and yada yada. But I've taken it more seriously because I find this interest. I'm intrigued by these kind of skills and thought processes. And at the end of the day, it comes down to one major thing, Dylan: helping people and making an impact on people's lives. And I get emotional around it in a fashion of like, if you came to me and we worked together and you're trying to move up and grow your career and grow your company and your business, you come to me for coaching and just some wisdom, and then those things that you're doing are helping you move that way. I have made a profound impact on your career to get you there, right? Because I think we all will never forget the people that have affected you in your career, your life, positive or negative, right? And there's always going to be the inflection point you have in your career where, like, man, I worked with Dylan or I worked with John or Amish at this point, and we did this together, and then it took me to this new level, right? And that's what I realized that's important to me is the impact I can make to be a better human, a better person to people, right? Because I tell people I never used to read at all. Like I said, I went to school and I did all my reading then. The only thing I used to read was like Road and Track and Motor Trend. I didn't want to go read no Radical Collaboration or this, Reaching New Heights book. No, like why? I'm done. Like I'm in the workforce. And it's about growing your mind and your mindset, right? And so over the past couple of years, I've got into working with coaches of just helping me deal with difficult conversations, difficult employees, difficult coworkers, dealing with my spouse better, dealing with, friends better, because in life, you're going to have all these different things that happen. And it's about how do you have that support network and that relationship. And so professional development is super key, and that growth mindset is super key. One of my favorite books that actually came from the CEO of Autodesk, he recommended for all employees to read, is called Radical Collaboration. And it talks about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And all it is about, like, I always go back to like the quote of like, if you ever watch Saturday Night Live, you have like Debbie Downer on there. Everything you say, she's like, well, you can't do this, right? You're like, that's called a fixed mindset, right?
Okay.
And growth mindset is like, how do you then think, be like, well, yeah, I can do this. I don't know how to machine this fifth axis part, but like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to look at this approach. And I'd be like, you know what? I can't do it. I'm not going to take the work, right? And it's just these simple things. Yeah, we know, but like, do you really know, right? Like, you're really a growth mindset. And so it's just a reminder of how to make yourself better, because it's always about getting 1% better each day, which leads to over a year, 365% better after the year, right? And I think that's what it's about is how do you make yourself better? Because we're all smart. Look, I go talk to Ken. He's a master machinist, but he's still going to continuously learn, right? And that's what makes him great, right?
I think that's what makes so many people fall in love with this trade is like, you can't be stagnant. Otherwise you immediately get lost.
I remember, where you worked before, where like it was all about 2.5 axis, and we don't need to do 3 axis, or we don't need to do these things, right? And it's not about we don't need to or we don't have the budget to. It's about what's the opportunity lost of you not doing these things, right? And what's the overall goal, right? And I think people are creatures of habit and they don't like change. And I think that's the biggest thing of, I look back at my career. I've had some great runs at companies. There's some people that go work 30 years at a company. Fantastic. That's great. Do it, right? I've made just changes in my career at different companies, and there's nothing wrong with that, because the biggest takeaway is not like, yeah, I went to go do like marketing here and then marketing here. The biggest takeaway of failure to me and me making a company move or a division move is that if I reflect on those moves, if I didn't build a whole new set of relationships, that's a failure on me, because I make the moves to learn something new, but to build new relationships, right? Example being, here I went to the number one simulation company in the world, which is Ansys, a different segment in the product development cycle of like validation, but I built an entirely new network of relationships and mentors. And even though I was away from manufacturing for some time and not on the machines all the time, like that relationship, and now I can introduce people to different avenues. That's the value part, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Of moving. So,
so you mentioned coaches and mentors.
Yeah.
How do you find coaches and mentors? Because I imagine it's like any other relationship, or like, a therapist, like you can get the wrong one for you and it doesn't help you. So what do you use to evaluate coaches and mentors to make sure they're a right fit for you?
It's interesting. Like being now in a new job, quote unquote, even though I have some previous relationships here, I have gone straight to the throat of like people of like, I want you, I look up to you, you're a leader, and I would love for you to mentor me and learn. And someone's going to say no to that, right? Like it's that's number one, right? It's like, being very bold about what you want and where you want to get to. And if there's somebody out there that you admire, go to them and talk to them, because I'd be shocked if anybody said, and if they said no, it's going to be, dude, I have no bandwidth. But if they are not even doing it, there shouldn't even be a no. And if they do say no, I'd love to understand the why behind the no, right? Like, okay, well, maybe this is really not what you thought it would be, right? And so I see it as there are services out there. I've used services like Bravely, which is fantastic, where you can have deeper conversations from like a career perspective, but then from like in your community perspective, look at the veterans, right? And look at the people that have been in the trade that then turn to education and educating people. They're the ones with some great experience over that. And so also too, it depends on what is your goal. Like, what do you want to get to? What's your why? What's your purpose? And I think once you figure out that purpose, you're going to figure out, do I need a business mentor more than like a machining mentor versus like a personal kind of mentor, because I deal with conflict difficulty and all this kind of stuff. And really, I think the overall goal is like you're kind of like just trying to have a conversation and get everything out. Like that's really what it is that people just think they can do it themselves and not talk about it. And coaching and mentoring is just getting things out. It's like therapy, right? Like you're still getting it out. You're just more focused on the conversation, right? And so it's don't be a stranger. It comes back to that. I admire and reach it out, because you got to take a step forward and reach out to those people.
Okay. And then the last question I had from Instagram, Amish SSCADCam asked, when will you visit the maker of your face again? So does your new job title allow you to kind of travel around again?
It does. I'm trying to figure that how long my leash is, right? And I'm a person of, I think COVID has really opened up a lot of post-COVID life has really opened up a lot of opportunity around what we do right now, a virtual podcast, right? And you don't have to be together. And we've getting comfortable in this. We don't need to travel. We can just get on a Zoom call to have a conversation. But I think there's more to a relationship that's key, right? And you have to shake hands. And I feel, especially in our world, actually, we'll be on the road in Denver next week. So if there's any people out in that neck of the woods, it'd be great to connect. But I missed IMTS. I went for a day to IMTS because I had to go to back in my previous life to visit corporate. So I missed everybody that like came in on Tuesday, and I was only there for Monday. So I think that's, if I saw Amish then, he wouldn't be saying this comment, right? But right, I think in general, you look at when's the next big event. It's like another 2 years to the next IMTS or emo in next year, and you look at when. How can we all get together, right? And so we're all trying to do things from a community building standpoint at Autodesk, right? Kaching's the guy behind the community side, and I know in the past they did some really cool fusion things, and I'm hoping to do it again. But I'm hoping to really see people virtually again and build the community again through like the challenge, right? And bring two worlds together, from education and corporate together, because you get more of a connection to that point.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, so Ken had also asked, are you going to have any kind of big SoCal Fusion Machinist meetup? And I think that, that would get you your contact and not have you flying around the world either. So
it is. And, you get into these certain, I call it like segmentations of like, where is the right area to do a meetup, right? You're going to have to do it in different regions, right? And what's the value that's going to bring to people flying in and having these conversations. I think that's why like the IMTSs or these big trade shows really work well, because then you can piggyback. So there's a reason to go out for like you to come to like West Tech, because you can learn and then you're going to go meet these other people, right? And so that's the thing I got to talk to with the team of like, how can we piggyback and get a lot out of these these group settings.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know you mentioned Devin 1186. I know that
Yeah.
the company's working on 11 or DSI is doing a big Autodesk meetup in North Carolina
Yeah, yeah,
this
they
month,
are.
maybe, or something like that. So
Yeah, yeah,
hopefully we'll start seeing more and more of those pop up in
it
the
is.
interim between IMTSs. And
Yeah,
I'd love to see more people more often. It was a blast getting to see everyone at IMTS.
it's community, right? And I think you bringing up that with DSI, I hope they come out west, right, and make something happen. So then now you have this whole western side that can get out and build more relationships, right? But it's definitely a like their event, right, versus a physical Autodesk kind of event, and they do such a great job in community building and relationships. And so I think this is going to be the first of many.
Awesome. Well, that brings me to the last question I ask every guest every week, which is what did you research this week? And it doesn't have to be machining related. It's just what's been popping up in your browser throughout the week.
you know, I being a family man, like I live on Costco. I live on Costco.com. I don't know what it is. Something about it attracts me to it. But I'm always on there surfing and it's just searching and researching for like their deals, right? On, hey, I got new Christmas lights or what's out there. Or, I go to Amazon, but I honestly, aside from like the traditional, like just brainless like search on Amazon and Costco, I'm always searching for that next read, right? And so, does anybody that recommends anything out there on it? And I was searching for a couple new books, and some of the books that did come up that are super interesting to me, and I'll name some. If you guys have read some, let me know. But they are that got recommended through search as well as other people because they were telling me about it is and I'm big into like I don't want to call it like business books, but I was coaching somebody in my previous company and he's starting to, grow into a leadership role. And I'm like, well, what are the things you're doing? The question I asked him earlier this week was, what are the things you're doing to get you better to be a people leader? You're moving from an individual contributor to a people leader now, right? And you got promoted from the team. So now you have other colleagues on this team. They're gonna be like, well, I should have gotten that spot. Why did you get it? Right? They're gonna be happy, but you're gonna still have your player haters, right? And so how
Right.
are you getting better to lead that team and build trust and be as like it's more of a partnership today than like I'm now your new boss and you do as I say, right? And so the two books that he brought up were one, it's Principles by Ray Diallo, and it talks about life and work and the balances between it and bridging those two together, he said. And then the other one he brought up was the McKinsey Way, and it's using techniques of the world of top strategic consultants to help you and your business grow. Right. And so it was very intriguing to hear that. I was like, wow, I just didn't think about everyone knows about McKinsey, right? Like the consultancy and what they do and how they come. It's like they're like Deloitte, right? And then just basic fundamental principles, right? And so I added that to my list. I researched it. I looked at like all the reviews on it. Principles has 18,000 ratings on it on Audible. And so right away I was like, all right, I got to add this to my wish list. And the
Okay.
McKinsey Way is fairly light on reviews, but it's still very popular. And it's a short read. It's or a short Audible listen. It's like 4 hours long versus Principles is a 16-hour Audible book. So for all those people that have to hit the road or something like that for the holiday, I mean, maybe add these to your list. The next biggest one I'm going to listen to. There's two. I actually have like a list of wish lists on here that I'm going to add. Is Simon Sinek. I'm a big fan. I always like research, and I go to like TED Talks. I try to watch a TED Talk a day because they're 10 minutes, so I can consume some type of just inspirational knowledge, and then of course move on. But
Okay.
so that's just kind of like something I try. I actually block the time off in my calendar so no one can book me to use that as professional development time. So if you're not blocking your calendar off, do that to hold yourself accountable to grow. But the other two are Eaters Eat Last is by Simon Sinek. And then Jocko Willink. If you guys have not read him or listened to him, he's freaking phenomenal. But he has one called Leadership Strategy and Tactics. That's on my list too. That
Yeah, I
got
think
really
that's
good ratings.
the sequel to his first book, isn't it?
Yeah, the how to be a leader, how to how you as Navy SEALs lead to win, right? That one you're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you read it out there, let me know. If you're like, yo, Curt, go read this one instead of that. Don't waste your time on this. Tell me. Because you get into one of these Audible books and you're like, do I go another 4 hours in it, or what do I do? Right.
Right.
So, anyway.
Well, since you were talking about TED Talks, I will also say you should check out, I've mentioned him a few times on the show, Nicholas Means. So he's he's a big aerospace nerd and has all of these, he's usually at like Lead Dev or DevCon or something like that, and does these big talks. He's got one on skunkworks. He's got one on, a few different airplane crashes, and he always uses them as linking back to what we can learn from these to develop better teams.
Oh, okay. Nicholas Means.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's got one. The first one I listened to from him was on the 3 Mile Island disaster, and that one is fantastic because it's all about postmortems and learning how to do blameless postmortems and what that actually means and how to correctly do that. And it all is through the lens of the 3 Mile Island disaster and how they did that in the postmortem of that.
No, that's awesome. I'm making a note about it. Got it. Awesome.
Well, Curt, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great to catch up and talk to you a little bit. And I know we're all really excited to have you back in the community.
I'm excited to be back. And, I'm on Instagram. If I don't reply back fast to let you know, I detox from it all the time. So I just will delete it and put it back and delete. So don't feel that I don't care, but I do. And it's just something for my own mental health because, we all know we all need to kind of step away from technology here and there.
Definitely. Well, so if somebody wants to reach out and contact you outside of Instagram, what's the best way?
So I think the best way is through work email, and it's curt.chan@autodesk.com. Please don't hesitate, right? And I'm always on it. I'm always checking that email. So it's either pick your poison, right, on what app you're going to be addicted to. But it's definitely my work app at the moment. So definitely reach out. You know me, I'm here to chat. I love just catching up with people. I'm excited. Just you have me on the podcast right away after coming back after 3 weeks back at Autodesk. And just really looking to learn from you guys again, right? That's what it's about, is learning.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to all the Patreon members who make the show possible. And thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back next week.